Hi, this is Doug with Database by Doug with a video on in and exists, and in particular how the nulls are handled with those. So in and exists are sometimes considered to be quote-unquote the same. So for example, if you look at this from the Microsoft exists documentation, this example here says that these two queries are semantically equivalent. So in a lot of cases this is true, but in some cases it's a little dangerous to think of these things as the same because their mechanism is quite different. So what does this mean that they're equivalent? Is the query plan always the same? Are the results always the same? Are variations of these always the same? And in particular in this video we're going to look at how not in is substantially different than not exists. So consider these two queries that are currently what Microsoft said was semantically equivalent. So these are categories that don't exist over in the products table. So think of a category where there's no product that is in that category. And here I'm using exists with a correlated subquery, and then I can do the same thing with the in clause. So I get a list of category IDs from products, and I only show categories that are in that list. So if you look at both of these and look at the execution plans for them, they are done in the same manner. So there's two clustered index scans with a left semijoin, and in this version it's also the same, two clustered index scans with a left semijoin. So even SQL Server is coming up with a query plan that's equivalent for both of these queries. But let's say that we negate each of these. So we say, well, show me categories that don't exist over in the products table. So here I've put a couple of extra records in the categories table, so we have something to look at here. And but if I do this as only show me category IDs that are not in the list over in products, I get no records back. So exists and in are equivalent, but not exists and not in are not equivalent. So they return different sets of records. And if I go ahead and look at the query plan for each one of these, there's a query plan, and without going into the details, let's just see if we get an equivalent query plan for this. No, we get quite a different query plan for that. So why is this, and are they still kind of semantically equivalent? Well, the one that appears wrong is the in one, so let's take a quick look at that. And yeah, there it is. So I'm not getting any records. And if I just execute the subquery inside of there, I get this list of categories, and at the bottom of the list I have a couple of products that have a null category ID. So in other words, that's a product that has an unknown category. So let's make sure that this is what's going on. Is so here are the categories that are not in the list of 1, 2, and there they are. And then if I do the same thing where I say give me categories that have an ID that are not in 1, 2 null, I get nothing back. So this seems a little odd, where category, say for instance 3, is not in 1 and 2, is category 3 not in 1, 2, and null? Well, the logic is this, that if this is an unknown value, we cannot say that category 3 is not in this list. And to show this more fully, here I am just saying show me a record with the value 1 in it if 3 is not in this list. And again, I can't confirm that 3 is not in this list because this value is an unknown value. I can't say that 3 is not equal to null, right? So again, nothing is ever equal to null, and the in operator is an equal. It's not testing for nullity like where is null, where the is null would be testing for nullity. So in order to get this to be to work in all cases, what I'd actually have to do is make sure that the list that I'm generating for the in clause does not have a null in it. So I have to actually filter out the nulls so that the not in is equivalent and to the not exists version of it. Now, why don't I need to filter out the nulls for the not exists? Well, if we look at the original a little bit more deeply, and what's going on here is that here is the exists version, and notice that the equality is evaluated in the inner query. And in this case, it basically is not going to, if the one side is null and the other side is some value, it's just going to remove that record. So I know that you know, the behavior is that when I say is some value equal to null, it's false. If I say is this value not equal to a null, I can't say. It's also false, right? So so here is what we're getting there, and you know, part of the thing is that the equality is evaluated in the inner query and records are removed. And then here, if I do it as an in version, the equality is evaluated in the outer query and the nulls are retained in the inner query. And so when I go to negate this set, you know, here I am with the exists version, the records are removed here, and then the exists evaluates whether or not a record exists or not, so that matching products are removed. And here, what we're doing is we're creating a list that contains nulls, and then the not equals is evaluated in the outer query. And we can't definitively say that each category ID or any value is not in a list that contains nulls. So this example highlights how nulls are treated differently by the in operator versus the exists operator. And I think that when people talk about the same, or that in and exists are the same, is that if they're used properly, they serve a similar purpose. That is, that they give the shortcut logic that allows the database engine to avoid a full join or avoid comparing all values. So there's a performance gain that could be had if you use in appropriately or exists appropriately. So in summary, in and exists are different operators. They do logically very different things, even if the query plan that the optimizer comes up with is the same when you use an in and an exists. So what the operator does and the query plan that the optimizer comes up with can not be the same. So thanks for watching.